This is Tom Lee, editor-in-chief of NEJM Catalyst, and we're talking today with Greg Esper, a neurologist at Emory who is Chief Clinical Finance Officer. We're going to talk about his title and, more importantly, the work that goes with it. Now, Greg is the first Chief Clinical Financial Officer that I've ever met. In fact, I couldn't find any others in the world when I did a Google search. So I figured that his role had been created to meet an unmet need, a need that is probably going unmet at many organizations besides Emory. Thanks so much for joining us today for this conversation, Greg. Let's start with a quick, concise elevator description of your job and what you're doing for Emory Healthcare as Chief Clinical Financial Officer.
Well, first, Tom, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's a real pleasure to be with you. I've been in my role for almost 2 years, and as a physician member of the finance team, I've oversight of care management, which includes care coordination, utilization management, post-acute care, behavioral crisis. I lead value analysis and partner extensively with supply chain. I worked with Revenue Cycle on its organizational turnaround, and I'm now becoming more involved with our employee health plan.
Well, before we go deeper into the array of responsibilities that go with your title, let's step back and talk about you. What's the path that put you in a position to have the conversation with your CEO that created this role?
Well, I wouldn't be in this role, if it weren't for a lot of people that mentored me. And if you said to me, Tom, you're going to be the chief clinical financial officer of Emory. When I started at Emory in 2005, I would have said something like, "You're crazy." I would have never predicted it. But Dr. Alan Levy hired me as a neurologist and the director of general neurology in 2005. He uh, soon made me the director of the outpatient clinics because nobody liked that job. And I realized that I didn't know what I was doing. And I said to Alan as much, and he said, well, maybe we ought to help prepare you better for it. And so I wound up getting an MBA at Goizueta Business School at Emory. And we started to make change. We started to do process improvement, quality improvement, et cetera. I became the vice chair of clinical affairs for the department in 2010, but that's also when I got my first system role in information services, when I started with the meaningful use rollout, helping Dr. Penny Castellano do it here. And then in 2012, my sort of father in quality improvement, Dr. Bill Bornstein, helped me become the director of new care models, and together we were working on the value acceleration program here, and did a lot of work with quality and internal cost of care for the organization. Then in 2018, I became the Associate Chief Medical Officer for the health system and the Vice President of Lean Promotion, which was my real learning in the organization with quality improvement, lean methodology, system standardization. And we stood up the Clinical Practice Council for Emory Healthcare with Bill. And that's sort of, what brought me to the point of, getting to the role.
Well, I have to say, I love the humility in the way you described the story, that you took on roles that no one else liked. And the first thing you recognized was that you didn't know how to do it. And then you went around acquiring some skills. I know that there are no children in the world growing up right now thinking, I want to grow up and be a chief clinical financial officer. And I know that that will only amuse you, not irritate you. Tell us about the conversation that led to the idea of this role coming up.
Well, it was the summer of 2023, and there was a system-wide change at Emory, and our CEO was new at that time, June Lee, who's really fabulous. He was getting to know folks and what they wanted to do. And he said, Greg, what do you want to do in the organization? And I said, well, what I want to do in the organization is no longer here. I had wanted to be the chief clinical officer, Uh, but he had separated roles. Bill had said he was going to retire. There was not going to be a chief clinical officer. There was the because Bill had been the CMO, CQO, chief patient safety officer. And we were talking a bit more, and I said to June, listen, I want to be at Emory. I want to help. What do you need me to do? And he said, I kind of need a change maker, a physician translator. And I said, well, tell me, where do you want me pointed? And he said, I really would like you pointed in revenue cycle. And he said, why don't you talk with our CFO, who is Chris Augustini, about a role in finance? And Chris is also the executive vice president for business and administration on the university side. And Chris said, I don't just want you on revenue cycle. I want you on all of finance. I would love to have a physician on the team. So the finance team always has the physician's input. So we never do anything from a financial perspective that has a negative impact on our patients and on our people. And I said, well, that's a great deal. So we created the position and we were off to the races.
Can you give us a couple of examples of the issues that you deal with in this new role?
Well, at that time, the organization was really suffering financially. We knew that there were two places to create major change, revenue cycle and supply chain. Of course, pharmacy was the third place, but June and others were all over that with the pharmacy team, Christy Norman, Ryan Homschild, others. We engaged an external company, Alvarez and Marsal, to help us with RevCycle, and they were outstanding. And I helped lead that initiative as a physician executive sponsor with an outstanding individual who came out of retirement, Pat McCabe, who was previously at Yale, who has now become our Emory Healthcare Chief Financial Officer. Along with Pat, we sort of did the work with Alvarez and Marsal and the revenue cycle team, doing a lot of blocking and tackling, really setting up a lot of work. And then we hired Jamie Watson in, who's now our Chief Revenue Cycle Officer, and he continued that significant financial turnaround. And we actually now have put in other individuals, other physicians who are in early and mid revenue cycle, again, as physicians in the clinical and financial interface. Secondly, one of the other big things that I helped take part in was we stood up value analysis with 6 medical directors over orthopedics, neurospine, general surgery, heart and vascular, interventional radiology, and medical surgical nursing. We stood up that system in fiscal 24 and put a $10 million target in fiscal 25, which we are about to accomplish. And we really went a long way towards standardizing products, bringing in new products, making sure that we have the right data to support that new product, those new products when they are brought in, doing capital and consumables for capital, and making sure that those arrangements are correct for the organization with our financial planning and analytics team. And then one of the other big things that I participated in and have led has been post-acute care restructuring, asset sales, and other things like GLP-1, new models of care with the health plan. And so those are some of the things that I have participated in this role.
Well, those value analyses with the 6 medical directors are intriguing. And if there was ever something you wanted to share with the world about them through NEJM Catalyst, you can be sure we'd be pretty interested. Now, Michael Porter, who helped found NEJM Catalyst, is the person who developed the idea of value chains of activities. And he always felt that differentiating value was most likely to be created at the interfaces of activities rather than blowing away the world by being extraordinary in any one activity. So my take is that your role is about improving the interface between finance and care delivery. Those are two critical activities, and you want to be good at both of them. But having those two activities work well together is a way that Emory Health can differentiate itself. Does that sound right? And more important, how can you tell if you're getting anything done when you're working at the interface as opposed to deep within one of those two activities, finance or care delivery?
Well, Tom, I'm a Porter fan, and he's right. The first thing I would say to physicians who want to be executive leaders in any organization is that first they need to be trusted as clinicians so that they, as leaders in care delivery, are respected in their roles as clinicians. I think that's absolutely critical. I think that there are lots of physicians also in organizations that don't have a title like mine that are probably doing the exact same work that I am doing. So to me, it isn't about what you call the role, but that the leadership appreciates that physicians have financial acumen and understanding in billing, coding, revenue cycle, supply chain, and can maximize tremendous gains for the organization when put in a position to do so. And Emory is doing that with a number of other physicians, not just me, in finance and beyond. For instance, we have another title here that's the Chief Financial Information Officer, who is in digital, who is really looking at the interfaces of finance and information. And that's Dr. Carla Hack, who is a surgeon. And so I think Emory Healthcare is really on the forefront of thinking about where do we have physician leadership who are excellent people in care delivery, who are really at the forefront of understanding how the interfaces occur with finance, digital, and other parts of the organization that make it click and tick.
Similarly, I'm sure that there's great value to Emory Health from having physicians recognize that because there's someone they trust based upon patient care who can testify that the people in finance are good people who are trying to do the right things, that probably has tremendous value as well. Well, we're entering a period of extraordinary pressure for redesign. And that means that finance and care delivery really have to work closely together. Now, my take from my own experience is that neither group really gets very excited about disruptive change. Can you comment with some advice on general principles for helping those two parties redesign care together?
I think it's a very timely question. It's an important question. And I think the answer, Tom, lays in humility and humble inquiry. I mean, when we started the lean journey, I read that book, and it's so critical to just go into conversations understanding that no one has all the answers. I think it's really important to manage by walking around. Go and meet people. The most important thing that I learned from Lean, the Toyota production system, is to go to the Gemba, the place where the work is done. Gemba was the only Japanese word we used when we were launching it here at Emory. And what we were really saying is go find out what is truly going on, because that's the only way that you can improve anything. My lean sensei had a great saying. He would say, the Gemba is undefeated. Go look, see what's happening. Where are people struggling? And see how you can support them to create the solutions. Not you to create the solution, them, because they know the work better than you do in general. And when they are empowered with a sense of vision and knowledge of where we are going and where we need to be, they will rise to the occasion and figure out what needs to be done if they know that they have your support. I mean, obviously you have to give them guardrails. You have to tell them, this is your budget. This is where we're, headed. You can't, overspend here. And, these are the limitations of what we can do from a financial perspective or an operational perspective. And, we can't build a new building for you. But if they have leadership, if they have vision, if they have attention, that is where true value is created, is by supporting the people to move that work forward. So I think that's the most important advice that I received and that I would give.
Well, Greg, I think your advice is hugely important, and it is very closely tied to Michael Porter's observation that real differentiating value tends to get created at the interfaces of the activities in the value chain. And I think doing what you and your CEO, June Lee, did by creating your role systematically is something that we and other organizations should be trying to make happen more reliably as opposed to by accident. And I am, and as a result of our conversation, I want to extend an invitation to the people who listen to the interview or read the transcript that if you have a title that no one else has, feel free to reach out to me. Or if you're in a role that was created, like no one preceded you in this role, feel free to reach out to me to talk about it, because probably your title or your brand new role reflects a need that has not been met in the past, and it is not being met in other organizations as well, and it is worth exploring. And that if these roles at the interface that get created by people like you are executed well, it's going to help people go to the Gemba and going to where the work is done that ordinarily in the course of their regular work week, they would not go. So that invitation is out there. You can email me at thomas.lee@pressganey.com, and we'll explore whether there's something more to be explored through NEJM Catalyst. Greg, thanks for creating this insight for me, and I hope for many, many others as well. And I look forward to see the other unexpected places that your career takes you in the years ahead.
Tom, it was a real pleasure. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you out in the Gemba or any place where we can meet up again.